right, and there we go. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of Vagabond Dog Industry Chats. This week we've got Yifat. How are you doing? Welcome to the show. Let me see if I can get the credentials exactly right. You are, let me see. You said you're an assistant professor at York University in the art of game and play.
Yes.
Okay,
I will give the full title.
please.
If anything else, academia likes titles. Uh, Assistant professor, tenure track, the art of game of play at York University Computational Arts.
Okay, Jesus. What does that? Okay, what does that mean? I am an individual who is I'm so far
Okay.
removed from education.
So we'll get. We'll get into the academia. So in universities versus like let's say a trade college, there's levels of hire for full time.
Okay.
There's sessionals which are part time and are usually not paid very well, and then you have um, the full time. Full time goes from assistant professor. That's the higher in rank. It's a junior academic. Tenure track. They're always the tenure track just means that in 5 or 6 years I can apply for a tenure, and then in theory I can never be fired.
Right.
In theory,
In theory.
you can be fired with a tenure. It's just really hard.
Okay.
Um, but you also have to go through a process to get there. So assistant professor, then once you get tenure, you get associate professor, and then eventually you can apply for being full professor.
Okay.
And that's usually like people who are like almost retiring.
Okay.
And then when you're retired, you're professor emeritus.
Okay. That means okay. When you're done, that's like a alumni or
Yeah, but you're
right.
like as someone who's the daughter of also a professor, though my dad is a chemist, so a little bit fancier than I am. You get you don't really stop working. Like
Okay.
you retire, but you keep your office.
Okay. Okay. So, but in terms of the work, like I understand, I'm a game developer. I develop games. What is it? Is it just teaching? Do you have like? Is it just a
No,
classroom at the?
I'm a game developer who develops game in an academic setting.
Okay. What does that mean?
It means that I develop games that are made for research purpose. Whether it's like, I'll give you the most like obvious example.
Mm-hmm.
I currently applied for a grant with people from biology to make a gamified version of a bee identification metrics that they're doing.
Bump like
So
buzz bee.
yeah, like so bees you can identify their gender according to whatever signs and stuff. I don't understand in that part. But the people from biology were like, oh, so we don't know how to make it exciting, or we don't know how to make it accessible, or we don't, and we want to make it accessible because we want the public to help us with identifying because that's a and so they contact me and another professor in my field, and so we just apply together for a grant. Whether we get it, that's another story. Also, my cat might show up.
Don't worry, the chat loves them.
I'll see if I can catch him. Do you want to come here? Come here. No. Sorry. You will say hi.
How about kitty? Meow.
He's going through a traumatic day because I'm
Oh.
moving. And another example I'm doing, and I think we talked about it, was I'm applying for a grant to make games in Alexa, the Amazon Alexa, and that will look at like voice and how we react to voice. Because I don't know if you know this, I have a fairly annoying voice and a thick accent. And over the years, I've been slightly self-conscious about it. I'm not anymore because whatever. I get paid for you to listen to me, with the students, so you know. Um, but um, but also with like voice AI stuff, um, um, they don't always recognize my accent,
Right.
and so I kind of wanted to do. And there's also around a lot of, uh, not a lot, but there's research around like gender and like AI assistant device and how they often have female voices because of service and stuff like that. There's a lot of talk around that. So I wanted to explore first making games that are voice only. As someone who's extremely visual, it's an
Yeah.
interesting experience, but also like looking at the way we react to voices. So I get if I get the I apply for a grant. If I get the grant, again, it's an academic grant. It's not an art grant. And then I make the project, and then in theory, I write a paper.
Okay.
What?
So the best way I understand an academic game as is
Yeah,
it is a game with a purpose outside of just enjoyment, right? Like we're
yeah.
looking at it's got a
Not a
baked in
game
purpose to
for-
do.
yeah, it won't be a game for commercial release. There have been like games that came out from like academics who were commercial product, but it's not as common. It's really games for or art project or whatever you're doing
Right.
specifically that is meant to explore a certain field more thoroughly, is to make I can say the easiest way of looking at it is experimental project.
Right. So what I'm finding interesting about, especially about the examples that you've given here, is that when I first thought of like, okay, if I have to make a game project for academia, it's going to be exploring something technologically, right?
Yeah,
Like seeing how we can use like ray tracing, for example, to instead of doing reflections, it can re-render
yeah.
the way
So if
cameras work or
you're
something.
so I'm in an art field, so but if I was in a computer science program, it's probably what I would have done.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. Because I'm doing I can code. I've taught myself to code in grad school, but I'm not a my background is 3D animation.
Mm-hmm.
And so and graphic design. And so I come from an art thing, so I explored the art implication of it. Where if I was computer science, I would look exactly at that,
Okay.
the
So
improving of the technology itself.
so then within the arts field of games academia, what would be a good a great example of like a really good, well done academic games project?
Ooh, that's hard. I think there's only 5 of us.
Okay.
Uh, I mean, there's a few. If you
Do you
look at
mean
the
in the
work,
city or in the world?
I think. I mean, so game academia is a weird place because most of the people, when you talk about game academia, you talk about game studies,
Mhm.
which is actually in the humanities, and those are people who do research theory around games.
Right.
So they write papers and they write books about video games. I'm not a game studies person. I occasionally write. I just had a small paper published about Survivor, the reality show, and game development.
Huh.
I can talk a lot about Survivor. A reality show in general. It's a very. But I make games. It have been like definitely in USC. Some of the stuff that came out from USC. Um, Tracy Fullerton made a
Or
game.
I guess a simple version is like, by what metric is an academic games project good?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, again, it's hard to say because there's just not a lot of people who do art academia in games.
Okay.
Like the whole field of games in academia in general is probably, I would say, 20 years old. Um, and again, that's going back to game study. A lot of people who are like teaching games, let's say stuff like NYU and stuff like that, they're art professors.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're not necessarily have a research lab or stuff like that. They teach and they use them, and they make games commercial release on the time. So um, all the folks from NYU, and of course the names all escape me right. And then so it's hard to say. I don't know. I don't think there's enough output from like artists in academia who do research to say what is a good academic game.
Okay. Okay. Then
Yeah.
let me try one more time and we'll rephrase it a little bit. When
Okay.
when do you most feel like you're doing the right thing or the good thing or something beneficial is coming out of it?
When I can push the technology, for me it's about pushing the technology and the ideas around games. So if I make a game that is still playable and fun, but explores deeper concepts, whatever those deeper concepts are,
Mm-hmm.
then I think for me, I'm successful.
Okay. Okay. I can get behind that. And I can kind of relate as somebody who's made games that have tried to push, envelopes one way or another, um, and explore ideas. It definitely it feels right. Like when you're doing it, it doesn't feel like stagnation.
Yeah, I mean the main difference between someone who's an indie dev that just does indie dev is that I have uh, the protection of academia, and so I don't have to, in theory, produce a commercial release.
Right.
In theory, I can.
Right.
It has been done. I think Walden, which is available, I believe, in itch and Steam, was done by Tracy Fullerton, who's the head of the game program in USC. Um, but yeah, for me, it's really like, what can I do with the medium of games that pushes the envelope, and I can make something interesting and push it from what we look at, like, a AAA release or a more commercial indie release, without, but also with like some. There are like stuff I cannot do as an academic,
Okay.
like, for example, like any experiment that includes human participant, I have to get permission. So I cannot make a game, for example, that um, like I have like stuff like ARG I can do, but I have to be really careful.
Okay.
Like it's a weird stuff. There's stuff that academia might not consider viable research. Um,
Right.
like I'm not gonna make, obviously, like if I come in and say, okay, I'm making, Call of Duty, that won't be particularly acceptable in an academic, unless I'm doing a game that is like critical of Call of Duty, which I sort of did. Um, yeah, I can't really do that. So there's like limitation, academic limitation, but there's also a lot of protection that doesn't exist so much as an indie dev, because, as you know, and I
Right.
know because I was an indie dev for many years, it's not always the safest industry.
Right. I mean, yeah, it absolutely isn't a safe industry. I mean, I think it would be hard, or it's very easy to find indie devs that are exploring ideas,
Yeah.
or cultural ideas, or progressive notions, or whatever you want to look at. I'm curious, in what ways do you think the necessity of capitalism in indie games kind of gets in the way? Like how does it hamper the exploration?
I mean, it really depends, but at the end of the day, if you want to make an indie game that explores topics that are more complicated,
Hmm.
you have to be fairly well off in order to, because if the game is a failure, that doesn't make, like, that doesn't hurt you as much as, let's say, someone who's more marginalized, or someone
Right, right,
from
right.
North America. um, it's a greater risk for them. And this to say, look, academia is also a capitalist machine.
Hmm.
um, they act like they don't, it is. As a professor, my worth is always gonna fall down on how much grant money I can get,
Right,
and how much students I can bring in.
right.
Yeah.
Uh, right. I guess that's a very realist way of looking at it. I mean, a lot. Yeah, I guess a lot of people don't consider enrollment numbers and grant money as a factor in what goes into running programs, but I assume it is the majority now that you mention it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Okay. So then, do you feel that like those factors ever get in the way of like what sorts of projects you can explore?
So I'm lucky enough, in a way that there's just not a lot, like there's not a lot enough done in our field academically for me to say, like, no matter what I propose, it's gonna be interesting for the grant money.
Hmm.
This to say, and this is goes into academic politics. I have an MFA, not a PhD, uh, which is whatever. I'm an artist. I don't have, you don't get PhDs in art.
Gotcha.
And so you do, but it's very
It's
uncommon.
not Dr. Bob Ross.
No, no. It's also like a lot of people have PhDs that like are not necessarily art
Right.
related, or they did PhD in Europe, which is a lot different beast. Um, but like, and so as artists in academia, and this is generally people who do like art in a university level, whether it's games or any other forms of art like theater or dance, because we have all of those. There's always the risk where the people who are going to look at your grant body, because we apply for humanities grant, they're like, oh, I don't know what you're doing.
I see.
Um, yeah, so that's always a risk. Again, I'm lucky enough where games are kind of like the cool thing now in academia, where it's like, oh my god, look at all those games those kids are playing. Maybe we should talk about them.
Right. Um.
Um, and
So.
so there's always this thought, but I'm lucky enough right now, at least, that my research is interesting enough as for the academic bodies.
Right. So
Yeah.
one of the things I'm curious about, like we definitely have in Ontario uh, grant programs for commercial games,
Yeah.
and because I was thinking about what you were saying about the like a marginalized individual who wishes to explore an idea or a topic in game form, right?
Yeah.
The the it is definitely possible for a commercial grant to like fill that gap of risk, the risk gap.
Yeah.
But the probability of getting approved for a commercial grant is relatively low on a project like that because by nature it's not intended for strong commercial application. But
Yeah.
an academic grant by an individual wishing to explore these concepts is more applicable there. How accessible are these kinds of grants to people who do not work in university or educational institutions.
It's not accessible. It's built for either grad student
Okay,
or professor.
right. So
So
people
there's no
people who've
like
already been lucky
if
enough to
you're
go.
coming, yeah, if you're coming from outside, you cannot access those grants.
Okay.
You can do like I've seen in some cases like I'm as a professor, I get a grant, and the grant is to help
Mm,
marginalize developers with funding. Uh, Traditionally, those ended up very badly.
really?
Yeah, part of it is just, uh, and this is coming as someone in academia. There's a lot of privilege in academia, especially once you get into a tenure track position. And I like just to make clear, I was a sessional for many years. I worked in India. I actually got Ontario Create. About
Yeah.
6 months, I got the concept fund just a bit before I got the position. So we did the concept fund, but we decided to not continue. Time wise, but um, there is a certain imbalance of power where you have someone, especially if you're a tenure professor. I'm still a junior professor, so there's still like I'm still fairly new, but people who are already tenure. Let's say you have been tenured for 10 years, 20 years. So you have a job that pays you 200K or 300K a year, uh, and you cannot get fired, and you usually have less. You don't know what the kids are talking about, right?
Right.
Like I have fought with many academics about their obsession with Second Life. Oh, I have so much to say about it. How much I hate Second Life.
Really?
Oh, academia is. There was a
Oh,
time
right. Yeah, I've heard like a
there
mil. Yeah, there's a bit of an obsession.
obsessed with Second Life, and it's so
Ah,
like all they talk about was like multiplayer and like people playing together. But I was like, why aren't you looking and stuff like at that time World of Warcraft? Why aren't you talking about like,
because that's got
uh,
dragons in it.
yeah, yeah? Why are you talking about like Fortnite, right?
Because that's got guns in it.
Yeah. So now with like Animal Crossing, we got to the point. Now we're talking about Animal Crossing. So
Right.
we have progressed. Um, this is slightly, but yeah. So there is a certain balance of power. There's a certain balance of age, and there's a lot of politics around it. So from what I saw in a lot of cases, um, it just ended badly. Um, I think I don't want to name
No,
anything
no, 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 no. We don't want to do
not
that
to get
either.
in trouble.
You never know who's
Uh,
going to be on the show next.
yeah, yeah. I don't think. I don't think. I think I'm the most palatable academic you can invite. Because I'm slightly still young and I'm not too serious.
Right. The Okay, so but I guess the fundamental question then is when academia has been in charge of a grant that has been approved to disperse funding to marginalized game devs,
Yeah.
where was the breakdown? Was it in academia? Was it in the application? The grant should never have been approved, or was it the
It was the middle.
in the
The
middle?
the connection between the people, the academics running it, and the people who are, the marginalized developers who are developing it. Um, like exploitation is different. There's also, again, there is a certain gap in terms of there's a huge financial gap, right? There's a big generation gap. There's a expectation is completely different, right?
Right.
If you're a marginalized dev, you want a bit of money so you can make your game. That's what you want, right?
Right.
You don't want to write papers, and you don't want to have to go through the whole in political process
Hmm.
around academia, because there's a lot of politics. So that tends to break down. To say I don't think that like I think that's a thing that is worth exploring. Yes, but I think there have to be a lot more of understanding. People in academia are not the greatest sometimes about relationship with the industry, and the industry isn't always best to have a good relationship with academia.
Yeah.
Um, I again, there's a few of us who are an exception. I am fairly active in the industry, even though I'm still, um,
On that
uh,
side.
yeah, because I was in the industry for a while, right?
Right.
And B, because I still have friends in the industry, and C, I think it's important for me, uh, aside from like the research and stuff, also as someone, I do actually have to teach, and it's making sure my students have can use me to improve their chances in it.
Right.
And so me knowing, like me being involved in the industry means that my students can be involved in the industry, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. If a teacher's got good connections, that's probably
Yeah,
one of the most valuable things that can be brought to
yeah.
the table.
Like that's why you should go. Like if you're going to study game development, and I would say don't go to a pure game development program, go to like mixed programs. um like if you are going to university and not to college, if you're going to college, if you're going to Sheridan or George Brown, that's a game design program that in theory that should get you a job in the game when you're done, in theory. uh if you're going for university, yes, at the end of the day, you're expecting a job, uh, but a university is a place for higher learning and not necessarily uh, uh, a place for you to just get a job.
Right.
So if you're going for a university program, um, I would say like go to programs who are a mixed program. Like art and technology programs in general are very good. Whether and this is not me petting the back for her program in general, but like OCAD, Digital Futures, other programs like that, they give you a bit of everything. So when you come out of academia, when you get your bachelor, you don't have to just go to one industry. Rather, you have a range of choices.
Right.
And so I tell my students, so our program specifically is joined with computer science. And so they have to learn computer science classes as well as art classes. And so I tell my students, sure, I mean, you can go work for Ubisoft, but you can also go and work for Google and do gamification.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. I mean, so I think this is the part where we're probably going to disagree the most.
I mean, sure.
I I think going to school to study games is one of the like craziest things you could do. It seems insane to me.
No, I don't think you should go to pure game programs.
No, no, no.
I agree with
Yeah, I
you.
agree. I mean,
Yeah.
if your goal is to make games, I really do believe that you should just go make games.
Yeah, I will have to say like there are different reasons for people to enter. Some of it is immigration.
Hmm.
There's also certain um, a degree does open door in some places, and nowadays
Hmm.
especially, um, like for example, Ubisoft Toronto basically hires just from Sheridan
Right.
nowadays. They just go and so there is that. I think like for me, um, like and I sort of agree with you, and it was a bit of a struggle when I was in Sheridan, when I was part time there. There was a point where I was part time everywhere because that's another thing around immigration. Uh, because I was
Mm.
temporary resident of Canada, I kept losing contracts because they couldn't hire non Canadian,
Right, right, right.
and so I kept teaching because that's the one thing that paid me money. Um, they like there's a lot of reason for people to go to academia, and some of my students go to grad school after, right? It's not necessarily. I had some issue, like there's always that feeling where you're like, okay, all these kids are coming out of whatever program, and there's no jobs, and they're just like, and they would have been better served just making games, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just joining game jams and making games. I want to say I feel less guilty currently because my job A is not just teaching. I think I mentioned so the breakdown is like 25% of my job is teaching, and then another 25 is a service, which is like committees and meetings and stuff, and then the
Fun.
rest is research. Oh, it's an or the I can't remember the exact number, but I don't just do teaching.
Right.
Um, versus like if in colleges, it depends on the college. A lot of it is just teaching. Um, I did find that I find less. Um, I find it less guilty now because uh, I don't necessarily teach the students how to work in Ubisoft.
Okay. Right. You're not just
Uh,
prepping them for the factory.
yeah, and earning whatever. I know how much they earn in Ubisoft, and
Right.
yeah, but also uh, I I give them as many opportunities for them to make those games and make those game jams games, uh, but they still have the structure of like school. And especially with a school like York, where a lot of them are marginalized students, it's a lot of immigrant and second generation immigrants, a lot of people of color. Uh, that gives them a certain like structure. I do
Okay.
think if you are going to study game development in higher education, the one thing that is important is that make sure your professors, like when I say, and obviously I'm not the only professor who does that I am I'm still involved in the industry all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I talk to people. That's a really important thing. What like game development program can give you is connection. So if you are going to a game development program, make sure you have those connections.
Right.
Because if you're not, you're just paying for a 4 year degree that won't give you it,
Right. Right. Right.
right? And so there is a thing. There are also certain stuff, but I think a lot of it has to do with structure and connections. I also really like, especially if you cannot afford it, go again to a joint program. Go to a program that is art and technology, that is not just games.
Right. Right. Because
Be-
specializing is.
yeah, because the specializing is great if you want to go into the game industry. But let's be clear, there's not enough jobs.
Right.
Um, and it's a hard industry to survive in. Uh,
So, I mean, the way I hear it,
yeah,
it sounds like um, the in large the AAA industry, the big studios are. That's that. If that's where you want to go, academia is absolutely the course of action.
you have to go to a specific programs nowadays that have like connections to the AAA studio.
Right.
Yeah.
let's
Like
say
the starting in QA moving up thing doesn't exist that much anymore.
no, yeah,
Yeah,
QA is just you just go in a circle.
yeah.
Um,
If you want to do a game design, in Ubisoft Toronto, go to Sheriff.
right
That's
now,
it.
let's say we've got an individual who has no interest in working for AAA, right? They
Yeah.
want to they want to make the best independent games that they possibly can. Is there anything that an academic program can provide them?
So most programs, like Sheridan has it, OCAD has it, Ryerson has it. I'm working on having it in New York. Have some sort of like programs that help launching business.
Okay.
And specifically, they will have programs that will give funding, or even like office space for startups. So York has it, but just not to games yet. We're working on it. But like, if you're, let's say, in computer science in York or Ryerson, and you want to open a startup, the school can help you with like providing office space, providing equipment, providing a startup money to start. Um, there's similar programs like it's like incubator program.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know Sheridan has one for the game stuff. I believe Ryerson have something. They have the innovation hub or interactive
Yep.
innovation hub. So it's not exactly games, but it has in. George Brown has some. So you could like you graduate, you have hey, I have a really good idea for a game, and I want to open a company. If you can join incubator programs, obviously like there are certain you have to go through a process, but that's like similar to any grant given body, and go there. And I know, and in some cases like um Arrowhead from Sheridan, I think the game is Arrowhead. I can't remember the name of the company. So there were a bunch of guys in Sheridan, and they made a game. They want level up, which is another in Toronto specifically. That's a really good opportunity for students. They want to level up 1 year, and that allowed them to, and they get some help with from the school, so they which help them connect with publishers and get some money, and now they have a company and they're making games, right? Um, so no matter which, like most schools will have some sort of incubator program,
Mm-hmm.
and so when you graduate you can apply for those. If you have as an indie developer, you can apply for the incubator program. In Ontario specifically, you can also apply for. Now, Ontario creates as a new program just for students. They have Ontario Create Futures, I believe it's called,
Yeah, yeah. The
and that's
future
people.
funders. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like it's not just for students, but it's generally students who are just graduated or about to graduate, who have a concept, have an idea, and um, they wanna get some money to implement. So there is like a lot of weird opportunities that are specifically for students,
Right.
which are useful. There's also, you know, I mentioned that some students go to grad school. Now, once you do a master and PhD, like I like a bachelor, master and PhD, you get money for.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot. You're not gonna be rich being a PhD student, but you do get 30K a year or something like that. Because it is a job being a PhD student. Same with master. Depends where you're going. So you get a bit of because if you're going to like one of the big schools, they might not, but they will give you a bit of funding. So, for example, we have like 6 or 7 master students a year, and they get funding. And part of the funding is they have to work in the university in something, or they work in one of the research labs. Um, or they, if you're a PhD student, they also TA. But there is a lot of just staff opportunity that it gets. And with a master, what you do if you're doing an MFA or something like that. So you do for 2 years and you focus on one project, right? And depends on where you're doing your master. Uh, but for example, if you're doing it NYU or I'm taking the really big names, or some of the University of California places, they're literally building your master. They're literally creating your master that will allow you to release a game by the end of it, or create a commercial
Right, right,
release
right, right, right.
of it. And so the opportunities are there. Um, to say academia is a perfect choice, no. It's not the right choice for everybody. Same with like just doing game jams and learning by yourself is
Mm-hmm.
not the right choice for everybody. Going to university or going to college is not the right choice.
Right.
Um, it has it has the great stuff about it that worked really well. There's stuff about it that just no, we can't do that.
Like
So
the connections and the incubation space and the ancillary opportunities that it provides, they sound really good
yeah,
until I factor in that there's tuition and
yes,
then it's like, oh well, okay, maybe I would be better off, investing that money in my own time and everything, and like it is a hard sell for me personally. So I'm curious then, if it's not for everybody, who do you think that games academia is most for?
um, so a lot of students, again, you have to be fairly smart. I don't want to get too much into tuition for obvious reasons because I
Right.
don't know, because each student is different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a reason why. Academia has accessibility issues. You do, and this is a similar issue with a lot of artistic industry in general, where there is a certain um, okay, you have to, you know, you have to have a certain amount of money.
Yeah.
Um, to say I have a solution for it, I don't. We have a lot of students who are not rich and are coming from, again, York is famous for um, a lot of people of color and immigrants, and they get awards and they get uh, all kinds of scholarships and stuff like that. They can survive. A lot of them work, and so as a professor, I also have to take that into account. That a lot of my students work. So for example, there are like, which didn't exist when I was in art school or when I was teaching art school or colleges, um, where I didn't have to take into account like them working. Where now I have to really take that into account. So it's hard for me to say. They all find their own way. I would say like don't go to the States unless you can afford it.
Right.
Um, um, International. Look, if you're international, if someone who was an international student, first of all, it's your only path to. It's one of the only paths to immigration. That's another talk altogether. But also, you're already paying double, triple as much.
Right.
So people who are international usually come for money. Um, Usually.
So to to so then who is games academia for? Is where we were.
I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, are you talking about game academia as like, oh, I'm going to get my bachelor, or are you talking about game academia? Oh, I'm going to grad school and getting my master and PhD.
I mean, do people enter academia like with that intention from day one, or is it something that like you sort of like slowly work into? Really?
No, I wasn't, but a lot of people do. A lot of people are like, I want to get a master or I want to get a PhD.
Huh.
Uh, some people start a master and PhD, and like after it was their dream and it was a hell, and they leave, right?
Right.
Plenty of people leave PhD programs. Master is not so bad. Master is fairly short, but PhD is can be rough, from my understanding. Um, but some people come in and say, "I want to go get a master. I want to be a professor." Right?
Right.
Same as other fields. Any other. Some people go and say, "Oh, I'm going to get a bachelor to get a job."
Right.
Right, and that's where stuff gets like, where are you taking your bachelor, how much money you have, uh, can you afford it, and stuff like that. And that's another conversation altogether. And even when you're getting into like the grad school and the level, you're asking yourself, do you want to be like, let's say someone like me who's an artist in academia and has an art degree, um, or do you want to go into theory and get a PhD, and then you don't do art, you write stuff, and like those kind of like art PhD programs exist, but they're very uncommon. Or do you want to go, to computer science,
Right.
or general science, or you want to go to, and those will be all different programs. If you want to do theory, like game studies, sorry, game theory is another thing.
Yeah.
Let's put it like that. But game studies, you usually go to humanities.
Okay.
You don't go to a program like mine. You go to,
Okay. Who should go to your program?
um, on the bachelor program,
Sure.
people who want to do art but want a solid base of computer science.
People who want to do art with a solid base of computer science.
Yes. So people want to do stuff like technical art. People want to do um, uh, game development. People who want to do just general what's called artistic programming,
Right.
and make, I don't know, shaders and
Right.
stuff like that.
I'm obsessed
Those
with
are the
shaders and
people-
particle effects.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Those are the people who should go to mine.
Okay. And then like we haven't actually talked too much about like what is your lesson? Like what do you actually like what do you teach when you have those, I know it's only 25% of your time, but
So I teach game design. But I also have like 4 classes. That's it.
okay.
To teach game design. So and some of my classes, like my intro class, is open for everyone in the university. So I get, sure, I get art and computer science students, but I also get like, random history students.
Anybody who's interested in games.
Yeah, they take business. I get a lot of business students.
I got an idea for an app. Yeah.
Oh boy, that's fun. And sometimes it's people who are like, "Oh, game development, that's easy."
Right. You fools.
You fools. I have to give them a speech at the beginning about it. And some take it because they really want to make games, but they're not interested in becoming a game developer. They just want to make some games, right?
Right.
So they're not getting like a 4-year game development program. That's not what they're getting.
Right. They're just
They're
spending
getting the basic tools in order for them to start and continue making games. And we do produce good results. But we're not a strictly game design program. And I'm on, like, there's 9 other professors in my programs. They don't do game design, right? They do a lot of AI. We all do AI.
Right.
We really.
good money. Good money in there.
Oh yeah. I don't know if art AI there's good money, but just making weird artsy AI stuff. I'm really into bots right now. That's like my thing.
Mm-hmm.
some do like physical computing, right? Arduino and stuff like that. So like you get an a tech like an art and technology background, and you can again take whatever you took from the different classes, because I only get students at second year, so they had a whole like web dev and other classes. um so sometimes some of them have found good jobs in the industry, uh, as programmers um, or technical artists, or positions like that. Some even as game designers, and UX designers. But some of them will go and work for big tech company,
Right.
because they do have they're officially registered in computer science.
Right. Right. Right.
And so if you're going to a program like mine specifically, this is for you to explore what you can do in art by using code. Makes sense. If you're going, I'll give another example. A program that was very similar for us, Digital Futures in OCAD, which
Mhm.
I did my master in. That's similar, where they do art and technology, but there's less coding because there's no computer science
Right.
part. So their output, and again, they produce really really amazing result, but they also don't have strictly video game classes. um they have a few professors who do video games, but again, they do web, they do UX, they do, and people came out of there, and some of them work in video games, and some of them work in other fields. And so there's no um like yeah, that's what I would say with programs, those kinds of programs. If you're going for a pure game development program, whether it's a bachelor, or a diploma, you're expected to work in the industry
Right.
after, right?
Um, okay. So I think we've covered a lot of bases on what a games program in academia is like, who it's suited for, the kinds of things you'll learn, um, a bit about what it's like being a professor.
Yeah,
I want to talk about you a little bit
yeah.
specifically. Um, before before the world of academia, before education took over, where did your games journey start?
So I guess it's a fairly odd, like, I guess unusual journey, where I started making game in my 30s,
Okay.
where like in games, I think at that time I was like the old crone in video games, because I was 30 years old. Now it's like whatever. But actually, as I said, I had a bachelor in animation, 3D animation, from I'm from Israel originally, so
Hmm.
in Israel. And when I graduated 2008, and I could, if you recall, 2008, I couldn't find a job. And I did some stuff. Eventually, found myself working as a graphic designer in the newspaper for a few years, and doing freelance stuff. And I was working at the like one of the second biggest newspaper in Israel. Um, I mean, they called themselves the first because the first one was a free one and they were paid. They're both shitty. They're both horrible newspapers, but
Okay.
but there were this was like 2009, 2010, so they were just like iPads were getting into the market, so they were
Gotcha.
working on an iPad application. So I was working as a graphic designer in this iPad application, but it was mostly InDesign stuff. Um, and did some freelance as a 3D modeler. Never wanted to do animation again after graduating from an animation degree. Um,
It's always good to finish a whole program and then never want to do it again.
yes, yes, if you can afford it.
Right.
As long as you find a job.
Right.
I mean, the program I did opened doors enough for me to find a job, even though it wasn't in animation.
Right.
Um,
Yeah,
uh,
that's the one thing I will always say that I mean, very very rarely do I ever have to look at like people I want to bring onto a project. Like I'm a very solo dev, but you know, if you do see somebody with a lengthy degree on their application, it does show no matter what, this is a person who can tough it out, who has the wherewithal to withstand a
it's
program.
also the school itself has effect on some employers. So I went to what's considered the best art school in Israel,
Mm.
um, and that when they saw that I graduated from that school, I got interviewed,
Right, right.
even though I was completely not right person for this job. But yeah, it opened up enough job for me to go uh, find a job. And I
Mm-hmm.
worked. It was a decently paid job, and it was a unionized job. So, you know, that wasn't a bad thing to have. And then, but I got, I felt stuck, as one does, and really needed to leave Israel for very obvious reasons. And so I left. So I went to grad school for immigration purpose, saying as it is. But I actually really enjoyed grad school. Unlike my bachelor, grad school was really fun. Um, like the master was really fun. I got an MFA, which is a Master of Fine Art, which is a terminal degree. So in theory, I'm not supposed to have a PhD. In theory, and yeah, and so I graduated, and started looking for a job. And at around the time I graduated, the game professor in OCAD left for USC, and they needed someone urgently. And I was like, well, I'll teach whatever while I look for a job, right?
Right.
And I started teaching, and it paid the bills. And it was hard. Like I did indie stuff. It was hard finding a job. Sometimes like a lot of contracts were just not available for me, because if they had Ontario
Yeah,
Create,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I just couldn't. Uh, they couldn't hire me, and so I
Yeah.
kept losing jobs. That was a thing that happened a lot.
No, I get that.
But I survived. Had some help from the parents, and made around 2004. I made a game called Real Army Simulator.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I met you, which was basically a game that I made because when I moved to Canada, everyone was like, sure, I can kill them because I was in the army.
Right.
And like, let's be clear, I fixed computers in the army.
Right. Army's a big organization.
Yeah, I was in the army computer help desk.
Right.
I literally was answering help desk
Tech support.
call. Yeah, I was tech support.
Turn it
I
off
went
and
home
on again.
every day. I was in the middle of Tel Aviv, right? I went home every day. And so when I moved to Canada, and like also people here can see, I'm 5'2".
Hmm.
I am not a threat to anyone. I can definitely not kill anyone. I'm
You never know until you try.
yeah, I'm a very short, kind of chubby woman in her late 30s. I'm not a threat. Despite whatever
That is
topics
exactly what a threat would say.
yeah. So I moved here, and one of my friends in grad school was like, it was a sort of a joke, but she was like, oh, so like you were in the army? And I was like, yeah, I had mandatory army service. And he was like, oh my god, so you could kill people? And I'm like, no, I cannot kill people. And so the whole game was sort of a react. I made it in ToeJam
Oh, yeah.
with my partner in like Yeah, 2014. That
To-
was like the demo
Toe
version.
Jam is a Toronto game jam, not a
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, might be other stuff. Yeah, but it was Toronto game jam, and it was just a boring game about the army.
Yeah. Well,
And
we played that
that was the
yesterday.
demo. Yeah,
The demo.
that was the demo, I think.
So for those who didn't catch that stream, it's like a game where you have to like make decisions based off of the prompts about different scenarios, and sometimes they seem completely arbitrary or like counterintuitive to what your common logic would be about
Yeah,
efficacy and doing what makes sense, and you either get closer to being detained and having to stay in the army longer or getting to go home.
yeah. So we have more developed version. This was the demo version. We made it ToeJam. We continued working on it. There's actually like full 3 episodes somewhere out there, which maybe one day I will release. And I started working on the 4th episode. So the first episode was like the daily thing. The second episode was about like guard duty, which was about like my guard duty was like once a month. We had to go for 4 hours patrol around our base. And again, our base is in the middle of a city.
Right.
We had like Uzis from like the 60s that didn't really, I don't think, could shoot. And also like you only like get someone who did like what's called a jobnik in the Israeli army, like someone who did like a job and went home every day. We only had like we had to like weapon drills once every 6 months. So the weapon was like too heavy for me because Uzis are heavy, and I we had to patrol the base, so it was this whole thing. So I made this a few games. It got a bit of attention, also from academia, but outside academia, I showed it in a few festivals and had a few stuff written about it. That's how I met you many years ago. But it was never strictly commercial release. I mean, I think I probably would have released it and made maybe $20.
It's 20
Uh,
bucks.
yeah, I mean, I made a more from the spreadsheet game. The spreadsheet game was a huge success. I made $50.
Hey.
Yeah, because it got featured in Boing Boing, I think.
Nice, nice.
And I found a whole slew of Excel enthusiastic who wrote about this game in their blog. Um, but yeah, so I made this game and then continued doing game jam games, did a lot of freelance stuff, did some 3D modeling for some AR stuff for the AGO and all kinds of stuff like that, and continued teaching because that was like easy money. And it turns out I was pretty decent at it. And it got to the point, I think, in 2016 that I was like literally teaching in every school in Ontario. Like I'm exaggerating, but I was like in OCAD, Sheridan, New York.
Wait. But where did you get into games? I've followed you. You were in
And I
school,
went to grad school.
newspapers, and you went to
I
the
went to
grad
grad
school.
school to make games.
Just that like you did.
Yeah,
Is this you never
I
played
was
a game
like,
before that, or
there was no okay. So there was really a game industry in Israel when I left.
okay?
Now there is, but it's mostly casino stuff.
Casino.
Um,
Gotcha.
yeah, almost exclusively casino. There is a few indie, but the money is where the money is, right? But I was like, I got really addicted to World of Warcraft in undergrad.
Nice.
This was like Burning Crusade era, like
Good stuff.
really into it because I was depressed and I hated school. Yeah, and so I got really into it, and I played games when I was younger. I mentioned to the students always, and they look at me like understand I'm truly ancient. But I played the Sierra Quest adventure games. I still love Gabriel Knight 2, The Beast Within, and I can talk about that game for a really long time. Uh, and every time I mention it, like the students all look at me like, "What the hell are you talking about?" And I feel getting older and older as we talk. Um, but yeah, I played those ones, but my didn't really have access to a PC computer because my dad had a Mac.
Right.
So I played a few Mac games, but I didn't really have any access. So it's really just with undergrad I got really into World of Warcraft, and I was like, "This is interesting. I want to see how to do that." And so I was when I went to grad school, I was like, "I want to make games." That was my thing in grad school. So my first game ever made was my master thesis, and I can assure you it was terrible, absolutely horrendously badly designed game. It looked pretty, but it was really bad. But yeah, but because I made games in grad school and they needed someone to teach games, they gave me a job. That's basically what happened.
Huh.
Yeah.
It's
But yeah,
it's
World of Warcraft.
fascinating how tied games in academia have been for you, like throughout, like games in academia for me have always like been like opposite ends of the or same ends of the magnet. They just repel each other, oil and water. Like every
Yeah,
time I try to do game stuff at school, I was pushed out. um
yeah.
and
I think it's very different now than it was like I don't know when you were in school.
mhm,
I remember, yeah, even with me in undergrad, they looked really weirdly about wanting to make games.
yeah, but
Yeah,
now look, now you
now it's
teach, now you do, now you teach.
well now it's like also academia is really into games.
Yeah, they realize there's money.
Oh yeah, I have to fight every year where they're like, should we make esports? I'm like,
Go.
sure, but not in an art.
Right, right, right.
We have a famous kinesiology program, and we have like sports management. We also have York has a very well known esports team.
I don't. Interesting. No, but that's very interesting that you bring out the kinesiology department.
Yeah, they do sports.
Right.
Just don't put it in an art school. I cannot help students who want to make esport. I'm a terrible gamer.
Right. Right. Right.
Like I'm not a terrible gamer, but I'm a decent gamer in very specific games,
Right.
and I'm extremely impatient. So don't expect me to get in the games. I've been playing every game I've been playing on like easy mode. I just don't have time.
It's fascinating to me that they're so ready to jump onto esports. Where throughout all of my experience with academia, they were so resistant to games, and now here they are so ready to jump into esports. And esports is so much more playing games
Yeah,
than any of the other
I mean, it's
endeavors.
still pushback from like older folks in academia because there is a generational shift. I think that's part of it. I mean, obviously there's also money. And by God, academia would never say no to money. Um there's a shift because there's a younger generation, right? Because now a lot of new professors are like me, older millennials. They have more experience in game. They've played games. They don't have that phobia of technology that a lot of older. There was a real phobia of technology when we were younger in academia, and there was real phobia around this new field because it's like, oh no, all the kids are getting addicted to killing people,
Right.
right? And I still get it. It's like, I remember showing, we did like a game night, and we were showing some weird artsy games, but also like Journey and stuff like that,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I remember it was someone, I think from dance, and he's like, oh wow, I can shoot in this game. Why is it a game? And so those stuff exist.
Right.
Oh, that pissed me off so much. Those stuff exists, but there is like a better understanding. Games are a valid artistic thing. Not only that, it's sort of taking over other industries. Like films are using game language.
Right.
Where games are moving further away from film, at least like indie. I mean, AAA is still really trying to make films. Um, Films are using game language, video game language, more and more. They're also like, there's a lot of interest in VR and stuff like that. And I'm really not a big fan of VR.
No.
Not in the game sense. I think for
Interesting.
experience, like I think a lot of people in films are making VR stuff, and that makes sense to me. I think AR is a lot more interesting,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
game wise, but that's another story. But you have like there's a lot more interest in that. And yes, a big part of it is finance, and a big part of it is just our academia moves slowly, schools move slowly, but there is new generation coming in, and the students are coming in. They've all been playing video games. They're interested in it. There's interest in generally in stuff that are interdisciplinary, like video games, and so it gets more and more into it. We're still fairly new in academia, and I definitely get some occasional pushback. Um, Not just around games, but generally around technology. Like I was trying to show other professors Discord,
Oh dear.
and that ended really badly.
Right.
Our program uses Discord
Right. Right. Right.
because I started Discord last year for my classes once we moved to online stuff because the Moodle, the program we use for class stuff, is
Oh no.
horrendously terrible. So I started using Discord, and now like the rest of my program, a lot of them are using Discord because it's really useful for. It's actually really useful for teaching
Right.
because you have this constant chat thing, and you could just if a student wants to do office hour, I can just pop into chat and um but yeah, I tried showing them Discord. That did not end well. um there's also like um I mentioned the obsession with Second Life.
Right.
It's we're finally moving away to Animal Crossing. That's the new thing.
That's. Yeah.
I expect many, many, many academic papers written about Animal
About
Crossing.
Animal Crossing.
10
Jesus.
years. I think I already got two papers.
It's crazy to hear that like the papers will be done in I assume 10 years is an exaggeration, but even a
Yeah,
year.
like around next year you'll start reading.
But even then, like I mean, the
Yeah, it's
yes, it
already
was a big boom. The
relevant.
game is like I don't know anybody who's turned it on in the last like
Yeah,
six
it's
months.
already irrelevant. And so you're always. That's why I don't write theory, because
Mm.
theory always makes it irrelevant. But it's also like if you're writing for a journal, for example,
Mm-hmm.
it has to go through a peer review process, and yeah, sometimes it takes like years.
Crazy.
Like it can easily take a year. Because what I'm expected to finish, like what I'm expected to produce is not so much journal articles, but actual games, like artistic artifacts. I do what's called research creation, because academia doesn't like to say just art.
Right.
But because I do research creation, I'm expected to make games. So turnaround is whatever turnaround of making games is. But yeah, academia is slow. But yeah, next year we're gonna get a lot of papers about Animal Crossing
Well, I'm looking forward to them.
and
Uh,
Fortnite.
and Fortnite. Papers about Animal Crossing and Fortnite. I'm
Yeah.
can't wait to dig into them. Going to be a riveting read.
I mean, some of them are really interesting. Some of them, if they're written by people who don't necessarily. The ones who are written by people who play games and have played
Mm-hmm.
Animal Crossing in the past, or played Fortnite in the past, or are familiar with the concept, they take Animal Crossing as an example. The problem with problem with writing digital media in general is that it ages before as you're writing it, right?
Right.
So I recently read Convergent Culture by Henry Jenkins, which was like for a really long time was sort of like a fairly important read in at least like uh, as a way of like looking at media, and that's from like 2005, I think. And Henry Jenkins is usually cited because he's like readable, unlike most academics. But you read like, but I was reading it, and it's everything about it aged. Some of it in like almost uncomfortable way, where he talks about The Apprentice, for example,
Oh dear. Yeah.
and you're like, oh no, oh no. And it's like, yeah, because when it came out, the view of something like The Apprentice was very different than the view of something like The
Right.
Apprentice
Right. Right.
now. There's a chapter that talks about J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter and the fan culture around Harry Potter, right? And this is again 2005, whatever. And a lot of it is like, oh, the religious stuff and like the fan having a fight with Warner Brothers, and like J.K. Rowling is portrayed as someone who's pro fan, and the fans
Right.
love. And if I wrote this chapter nowadays, this would be a completely different
Right, but
experience.
so I mean, I guess there is some value to that datedness, though, because I
Yeah,
mean, like we tend to forget the way things were, the cultural zeitgeist
yeah. I mean,
of The Apprentice or
yeah,
Harry
the way
Potter.
the apprentice was like received in
Hmm.
2005 can teach us a lot about the certain political state of the United States nowadays.
Yeah.
Because the image created by Donald Trump in The Apprentice was the reason why he was elected. One of the reasons,
Right.
right? This like successful businessman, all those stuff, you know, the gold toilet, all those kinds of stuff. Um, but you read other books um, that don't use that specific examples, and they did not age as much. Like uh, Hamlet on the Holodeck, another important like digital media book, and this is Janice Murray, and she talks about digital narratives and like she talks about procedural generation and procedural narrative and stuff like that, and that did not, and that's 2008 or so. That did not even close to what the other ones, because her examples are not specific examples.
Right.
Like the only specific example she gives is Eliza. Uh, oh, Eliza. I'm not sure the name of it. Which is Eliza was a chatbot in the '60s. That was like a psychology chatbot.
Okay.
That basically all she did was repeat after you. But people took it really seriously, and so it was real. And I'm paraphrasing the whole story,
Right.
but they thought it was so real. The person who wrote her that bot became like became this like hated computers and wrote a book about how computers are going to destroy us, and
Huh.
pretty much all of our anti-computers digital computer sentiment is probably connected to him, because this was like MIT and stuff like that. But her examples were not specific. She didn't look at like one specific artifacts from that time. She looked at the way culture changes, and like what does it mean to what does interactivity means in terms of narrative, and how it's going to tell a story in the future. And you read it, and it's like, oh yeah, she got it. Like it feels relevant. Not all of our points are, but it feels relevant. So it changes. But yeah, the nature of writing for digital media means that your stuff will age as you write them, and so you have to figure out how to write them.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I guess as we wind down now, I mean, usually I ask people what are they working on, or when's their game coming out. But what do you what should people look for if they're interested in what they've heard tonight? Where can you lead people?
I'm I release a game almost every 2 months.
Okay,
Uh, they're usually game jam games, but I want to make a thing, I make it. Some of them are deeper than others. I don't know if you played the zombie game. That was just me wanting art.
that's good.
Let's make a paper doll zombie dress up thing, right? Um, where like other stuff were the twine stuff, where like the conversation with Emma was me feeling guilty about buying Emma Goldman books in Amazon. So I made a full game about it. So whatever comes to mind. I do release quite often, or at least I try. I am working on stuff with the Amazon Alexa.
I'll drop
Um,
the itch link so people can go check it out.
yeah.
But buy some games.
Like I am working on stuff with the Amazon Alexa. I don't know when they will ever come out because boy, I have a lot of stuff to say about developing for the Alexa. It's kind of a pain.
Right.
But I'm aiming, like, obviously not a commercial release, but I am aiming to send it to festivals and stuff like that. Once there's something concrete. But yeah, it's probably going to be where a game where I sell it as like a game where you make Alexa cry. Um,
Nice.
yeah, like you have to be mean to Alexa. That's the game.
Interesting. I can see
Feel
where the
guilty.
psychology element comes in.
Yeah, and feel guilty about it.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah. Well.
See.
Um, Depends which voice. So I wanted to see if you could, like, depends which voice you're using. Like, if I'm using something like my voice, and my accent specifically, because it sounds tough, apparently. I've been told I sound tougher. Um, People are less inclined to like feel bad if I cry, but we'll see. Anyway,
Interesting.
so that would probably, hopefully, will go to festivals once it's done. And yeah, and I continue making weird games in non-game engine. So I made the Excel one. I made a Instagram story thing. I'm making something with Jupyter Notebook.
Oh,
If you're familiar with Jupyter Notebook is made for, it's like how to describe it. Somebody probably can. It's like a programming, like a place you can program, but it's like meant for data science, so you can actually put like graphs inside and all kinds of data.
gotcha.
And the presentation is really nice. It's a really nice program. I have everything good to say about Jupyter Notebook. And like it remembers what you did before, so you can make fairly interesting experience. So I'm trying to do some uh, AI stuff in it, and maybe do some Discord bots. I have a lot of stuff.
Discord bots are fun.
Yeah, I want to make like weird Discord board bots. I have no idea what I want to do, but I want to make them.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, yeah,
Interesting. Interesting. Oh well, we'll see.
yeah.
We run game jams here, like every 2 months or so. I'm curious to see. You've got me interested in doing something outside of a game engine, but
This is a whole thing that I've been like really interested at. It's like because I'm fairly agnostic about game engines. Like
yeah, similar.
whatever game engine that fits whatever you need to do, right? Like we're now actually moving to Unreal in terms of like the program,
Right.
but um,
As from Unity.
yeah, because the computer science guys want to teach C++, so it seems
Gotcha.
logical. Also kind of like Unreal. Unreal's kind of great. Not really great for weird experimental stuff, but it's
Yeah,
great.
I think it's friendlier for first timers too.
Yeah, if you want to make something pretty, just great. It just works great from the box, which is nice. Um, but yeah, I just like making weird games in non-game engines, or even like using small game engines like Bitsy or Pico 8 or whatever.
Well, we'll
And
keep
then
an
usually
eye.
like I have a really weird idea and I just make a game.
Well, right. Well, we'll keep an eye on the itch page on the Twitter.
Like Hummus Clicker was a game that I made because everyone kept sharing like terrible hummus flavors with me.
Yeah, we played it. We played. I think I put like 40 minutes into that one.
Yeah, this is my masterpiece. It's because like I kept yelling about North American destroying hummus, uh, and like lack of understanding what hummus
Yeah,
is.
I think I started to understand what it was about when I unlocked the toothpaste.
Yeah, and so and people like my friends on Twitter kept like it became a hobby of people sharing like terrible hummus flavors.
Mm,
I think the latest one someone sent me was gingerbread,
okay.
and so I made a game about it.
Well, there we go.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming on, teaching us so much. It was wonderful having you. Wonderful getting a break from talking with developers, like hard indie devs. They're just all the same. Nothing new on the table. But it's nice having.
I mean, I can assume once you do a lot of like academic, you'll say the same thing. I feel like we're all
I don't think I'll have any other professors
no.
willing to come on and deal with us.
Well, you should have if you ever get Emma Westacott because she's the game professor in OCAD.
Okay.
For, among other things,
New
because she
challenger.
worked with,
New challenger approaches.
hmm?
A new
Well, she
challenger.
worked. She worked with Douglas Adams, and I kept on
I'm into that.
the spaceship something game.
Hitchhiker's Guide?
No,
No.
the other one he made, the one with the spaceship. I can't remember the name right now. So she has like sometimes you can make her tell stories about Douglas Adams.
Okay, we'll see.
Yeah.
All right.
It's great.
This chat says thank you so much for coming on. The Minty says favorite chat of the show ever.
Oh,
Best episode yet. And also best cat. Please give extra chin
yeah,
scratches.
his name is Hex.
Give
So
give Hex some extra chat.
I live in 1313 on the 13th
Oh dear.
floor. I'm moving tomorrow, but right now, and so I got a black cat, and I had to call him Hex.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
guys, I'm gonna be back at it tomorrow. We'll keep making some games. You know what we do here. See you at 1 tomorrow. Thank you again for coming on, and goodbye.